So I wanted to say at the beginning that the YouTube channel and the course, of course, are for people in many different disciplines. This lecture is a bit more medical than most in the course, but on exams and papers, you're not responsible for the more medical parts. And you can think about it from other points of view. People who are medically trained coming here today might be a bit put off by the AI and the ethics. I mean, everybody has their own specialty area, but I think generally we've been able to successfully educate and entertain a wide variety of audiences. Okay, so with that in mind, let me start sharing. Okay, so on the one hand, the topic may seem to you to be exactly the same as the topic of the GlomCon talk that I gave on January the 8th. But what you will immediately notice is that the slides are entirely different, and that's Hannah Grozdanik's work. She has modernized the slide template, and it's a lot more exciting to look at than it was on January 8th. Secondly, there's a kind of subtext here that you know that on January the 3rd, I gave a talk about the interesting next 60 days of AI. And this presentation today is one of 12 sort of time points in the trajectory of that 60 days. And for those of you who have watched all the previous videos, you may wonder whether there's anything new about AI that we're going to reveal. And yes, that's on slide 24, and I will point that out when we get there. Okay, so the ethics of pig-to-human transplants, artificial intelligence, and why the future is porcine. So disclosures, financially, there's no disclosures, but politically, there is something. As chair of the LABMP Foundation for Transplant Pathology, I pushed tissue engineering pathology as a logical future of transplant pathology starting 12 years ago in 2011, ignoring the possibility that pig-to-human transplant xenotransplantation pathology would be the future. I knew the joke that xenotransplantation is always right around the corner, but assumed it was not actually happening for a long time. Now, it looks like possibly I backed the wrong horse in that last year we began doing some human trials of xenotransplantation, and it is possible that this is going to take off in a really amazing way and could, within a few years, provide all the organs that we need for everybody with end-stage organ failure. But right at the moment, we don't have the evidence for that success. So it's not really clear. Right at the moment, stem cell generated organs, the idea of decellularizing and recellularizing organs with stem cells, and pig-to-human transplants have sort of equal status. Neither one has been proven that they actually are practical and will work. But many people predict that pig-to-human transplants will be proven to work during the current year, 2023. That's another thing that makes 2023 exciting. And I have Controversies Conference for the American Society of Transplantation that I am directing in October of this year. And we think that by that time it will be clear whether or not pig-to-human transplants are working. You can imagine kind of combining the two. You could use a pig template, put human cells in it, and maybe create stem cell generated organs that way. But you would still need to overcome the problem I talked about later, getting the right cells into the right places and creating long loops of Henle that are necessary for concentrating the urine. I don't know if concentrating the urine seems important to you, but it is. Like if you think about having a kidney that didn't concentrate the urine, you'd have to excuse yourself to the washroom 3 times during this presentation. That's probably no kind of life. So the plan of the presentation, many of you know that I'm inspired by Rich Sutton and his ideas about artificial intelligence. And he has a style of presenting lectures that I haven't quite mastered yet. He starts with a slogan, a short, memorable slogan, and that becomes for the rest of the talk. And I've got a bunch of slogans here, maybe 8, and they're not short enough yet. But eventually I will master the Rich Sutton style, starting with short, punchy slogans. So if you had to pick one thing in this list, maybe what I would point out is the second one, that there's this massive increase in human creativity, scientific discovery predicted in 2023 as a consequence of AI advancement and GPT-4. That's exactly what we need to make a success of pig-to-human transplants. And if we can succeed in that, it really would be medicine's finest hour. It may seem to you that medicine is doing a lot of really great things, and it is, but this would be a bit more. It would be more far-reaching and have a greater impact than just about anything that medicine has done in the past. The other thing I wanted to point out is what is in the 4th bullet here, which is the LABMP classification, the LABMP Foundation for Transplant Pathology, that I created 32 years ago, is back and open for business. So we used to have meetings every 2 years. We skipped a year. I think that kind of created the impression that there was a bit of inactivity, and that is not the case. We're back and open for business, and as much as I can, I'm going to be emphasizing how there could be new LABMP classifications, both for pig-to-human transplants and for stem cell generated organs. And finally, every single one of you can help in suggesting people to be part of the Controversies Conference in October. We will have 30 people there, and if you'd like to send me names of who you think should be there, yeah, that would be absolutely great. So what's the big deal? Well, worldwide, there are 1.4 million people each year that are in need of transplantation for end-stage organ failure. Before COVID, we were able to fulfill the need of about 10% of those people. And since the advent of COVID, it's dropped to 5%. So most people die waiting for a kidney, for an organ, and do not receive one. And with pig-to-human transplants, we could conceivably reach everybody who needs an organ, over 1 million people annually. Same thing is true of stem cell generated organs, if we can make that work. Could be either or both or a combination between the two. And if you think about some unsatisfying things about the field that I'm in, I mean, kind of transplantation and nephrology, kidney medicine, and transplant pathology, all of those areas have experienced a loss of luster. How about that? That it used to be at parties and things that transplant surgeons and kidney medicine docs and transplant pathologists would all walk around as feeling that they were really, the best of the best and the brightest in medicine, and it just doesn't feel like that anymore. And there are recruitment problems, workforce problems that we never had before, and a certain lack of appeal to young people and potential trainees. And you are all young people. So hopefully I can also convince you that these areas have greater promise than most people think. There's also the problem of technological unemployment in medicine due to replacement of human workers by machines. So properly structured, stem cell generated organs and pig to human transplants could reverse all these effects. And how can AI assist? AI can assist because the number of possible approaches to xenotransplant and stem cell generated organs exceeds human cognitive capacity. You may not find people saying that very often, but I think you can readily agree that, you're having difficulty wrapping your own head around many of the concepts that we're presenting here. And it's not just you. Everybody feels that. I mean, even if you take one particular area, like in stem cell generated organs, what should the matrix be? There are thousands of possibilities for how you would determine that. And so it's just one of many areas like that. There's just too many different avenues, different trajectories for one human being to be able to keep them all straight and to make decisions. So AI is really good at assisting us with things like that. And so that's what we feel, that for journal editors, medical leaders, for all of us, this could be medicine's finest hour, figuring out how to react to AI advancements in the early part of 2023 and how it should impact on pig to human transplants and how to proceed with it ethically. Yeah, okay. So the big 24 challenges of humanity addressed by collaborative intelligence. So this is that number. So you may wonder, we're quite proud here of including everything. And you may wonder how we can claim to include all the challenges of humanity, and that's through unknown unknowns and other. And so all the things we ultimately can understand the solution to once AI does the heavy lifting of partnering with us. You may object that the problems are too complicated, but then you realize that every subset of these 24 problems is something humans can easily wrap their heads around, whereas no human can wrap their heads around protein folding and nuclear fusion, things Google DeepMind AI has already partly solved. So the time is ripe for DeepMind and its competitors to address some of the messy challenges of society and save the human race. We offer the opportunity for you to influence which societal problems DeepMind and their competitors choose to address. And we need new structures to make these cooperations happen. And part of that includes inspiring graphics. And so you may have gotten a bit tired of DALL-E-generated graphics. Good to look at some human-generated graphics. These are by student Ishita Mogi, who's one of the TAs in this course. And yeah, I think it's important in every way we can to kind of promote these ideas of all the ways in which AI could remedy many of the problems that humanity has right now. We put together grant teams for this. We have a total of 28 people from the CFAR and CIHR grants, a lot of diversity, and we have both people of color and Indigenous people working with us, and both faculty and students. Here are some of the students, some of whom you will recognize. Yeah, so we are quite enthusiastic about making these things happen. And so pig-to-human transplants and stem cell generated organs are just one of the possibilities in a long list of ways in which AI could improve things for humanity. Now, this is kind of a joke, but it is true. And I think you'll feel it as this talk goes along, that these things we're talking about are very complicated. These questions that kidney physicians and transplant pathologists, transplant surgeons deal with. And we may be the only people still employed in 2045, long after machines have taken over the jobs of everybody else. We may still be working because it's so complicated. Yeah, that's probably not actually true, but it's fun to think about. And you may be confused about the technological singularity in 2023. Talking about the special AI aspects of 2023, is that the same as the technological singularity predicted for 2035 to 2045? No, it isn't. But there obviously is some relationship between the two. And if everything happens that we believe will happen in 2023, by the end of 2023, we'll have a much better idea of what the singularity will actually be like when machines are smarter than not only individual humans, but the whole aggregate human race. Okay, so what about precision medicine? Precision medicine has been around for a long time, and we've been talking about it in the LABMP transplant pathology meetings for 8 years now. In 2015, the LABMP meeting already had Alex Lupi making precision medicine look very appealing, with some help from Barack Obama on video. And imagine how much better it would be in 2023 and beyond. And we need that precision medicine approach as a component of pig-to-human transplants, along with machine learning, spatial transcriptomics, and deep phenotyping. Yeah, and so this is one recent conference on pig-to-human transplants. On November 29th, 2022, Paris Transplant Group and NYU jointly presented xenografts deep phenotyping as a joint project of those two groups. Yeah, and so we will need a BAMP classification of the transplant pathology in pig-to-human transplants. It's not going to be exactly like human-to-human transplants. You may wonder how pigs are different. I don't know if you ever touched a pig, but the body temperature of pigs are substantially higher than humans. It's like every pig has a fever compared to us, and many other things. Their organs grow bigger than ours. So if you put a pig heart in a human, it may outgrow the thoracic cage. Yeah, many interesting problems you probably hadn't thought about before. And the same thing would be true. Just a minute. Hello. Thank you. Bye-bye. Sorry about that. Yeah, the same would be true for stem cell generated tissue engineering constructs. For both, we would need a new BAMP classification that would need to be validated. It needs to be constructed properly. Yeah, we don't want to begin pretending that it's 1991 when the original BAMP classification began. What are some of the problems? Well, I spoke about in the stem cell generated organs, having the right cells in the right places. And so this is 10-year-old data, but in this model, decellularized and recellularized rat kidneys, you got podocytes, which are cells that should only be in the glomerulus, never anywhere else, wandering around in the interstitium looking for something useful to do. And we don't know of an obvious solution to that. There's certain natural homing of cells going where they're needed, but it's not 100%. And so it's just one of many problems. It's also the number of cells. If you know much about the glomerulus, this looks like it has too few cells. There should be more cells there. So yeah, there are lots of difficulties with what happens when you remove cells and then recellularize an organ. It's not perfect. Does it need to be perfect? Probably not, but that's what future stem cell generated organ pathologists will have to figure out. What is the cutoff for how abnormal an organ can be and still be worth transplanting into somebody? Yeah, and the other problem I also alluded to before, and that is being able to concentrate the urine. You need to have these long loops of Henle, this part of the tubular system going down in the osmotic gradient of the kidney medulla. And if that doesn't happen, then you know, you're basically spending all the time you know, getting rid of the water that you take in because you cannot concentrate the urine. It seems insoluble. At a recent meeting that I chaired that had experts from around the world, I asked them whether they thought this was a problem that would be solved in our lifetime. None of them did, and I asked them if we don't solve it, whether it would be worth still transplanting kidneys, and they thought no. But maybe in pig scaffolds, we'll be able to work this out with AI help. It may be impossible for the unaided human, but that doesn't mean that human plus AI could not accomplish this. Maybe we could solve that. What about the ethics? Well, it seems to me, just being practical, that the ethics is massively dependent on whether the technique works. Just think about that for a moment. So if you're comparing a bunch of potential ways of solving the shortage of organs, and none of those have been proven to work, then they're all co-equal. So opportunity cost, funding, diversion, they're all competing with each other, right? But once one of them is actually working, and you could say, well, over the next 10 years, we'd be able to provide organs for absolutely everybody in the world who needs them, if you were really confident of that, it changes the ethical equation entirely. Not in theory, but in practice, right? That may be something that you weren't all that comfortable with before, you would now accept because the benefit to people is so great. And yeah, there have been many other things like that. Transplantation itself was very controversial, human to human transplants, until the advent of the drug cyclosporin, because before that, it really didn't work. Rejection was too common. The function of the organs wasn't very good. But once cyclosporin came along and the other newer anti-rejection agents, then it really did work. And the ethical arguments against transplanting organs between people disappeared. Yeah. So, but how should we think about this? I think you would immediately see that we needed a lot of different points of view. So we use pigs for food. Not all of us eat pigs, but some of us do. Does that immediately mean that it doesn't matter at all what we do with them? No, it doesn't mean that. It's hard to know really what it means. It's kind of like sending human males to war, right? What does that mean? When a war breaks out, we send a lot of men to war and some of them die. Does that tell us anything about the ethics of transplanting human organs? And so not really, right? I mean, it's interesting information, but it does not really relate directly. So I think our ethics will evolve along with everything else. And in the end, when this is successful, if it is, we'll have a way of describing the ethics that we have come to, and people will be reasonably satisfied with that. But at the moment, we are not there yet. And it's interesting that there are articles that argue for an absolute ban in pig-to-human transplants. But that's because they're saying we're not trying hard enough in human-to-human transplants. But that's not true. Even if we were to double the current effort, we probably could only get from 5% to 10%. We can't get beyond that with the current way of doing human-to-human transplants. So we definitely need something else. And how shall we describe this? And what is the propriety of medical writing. I don't know if these things you feel strongly about, but just look at this paragraph about the ethics of pig to human transplants. It will be necessary to house animals in isolation and in sterile facilities, which can significantly diminish well-being in these highly intelligent and social animals like pigs by preventing the expression of natural behavior, such as digging and rooting in dirt, wallowing in mud. Pigs really like to do that, and playing. Pigs play video games. They're pretty good at some video games, and restricting interactions with co-specifics, resulting in stress and boredom. Would you be troubled to see something like that in a medical article? But if you are troubled by it, how are we going to be fair in our treatment with pigs if we can't talk about things like this? And boy, in a draft of a paper I once wrote, I put in something about pigs playing video games. Some of the other authors got so mad. Yeah. So I don't think there's any right and wrong about that, right? It is just something that is an interesting issue. Okay, so now I'm going to talk a bit about what I talked about in that presentation on January the 3rd, the interesting next 60 days of AI, January 3rd to March 2nd. And the future is likely porcine because of these AI advances. So here we are, you see, this is the list, and here is January 26, 20 teaching session of pig to human transplant. Yeah, and regenerative medicine. That's what you are currently experiencing. Okay, so has anything happened during this period? We're now at day 23 of this 60 days, and I promised you on slide 24, which is this slide, there would be some new information. So deep fake X-rays show the feasibility of reverse engineering histology. In other words, pathology pictures. If you think about kidney biopsy pathology, pictures of the light microscopy, immunofluorescence, EM, electron microscopy, maybe other kinds of imaging. So with radiology, deep fake X-rays are already here. So you can put in data and end up with a very realistic looking X-ray that is not identical to any patient X-ray. And soon we'll be able to do the same thing in histology, pathology images. Yeah, so, and ChatGPT is able to pass the US medical licensing exam. Some of you may be thinking someday taking that exam. It's a 3-part exam, and ChatGPT, it doesn't easily do it, but it can just barely pass all 3 parts of that exam. So those are surprising things, that they make us think that we're dealing with a kind of new situation vis-a-vis the relationship between us and AI. And yeah, that's pretty interesting. So will it add time? Probably not. When the LABMP classification began in 1991, we vowed not to lengthen the time for signing out transplant kidney biopsies beyond the average of 29 minutes. But now, in theory, it could be practically instant. It may be that the AI has figured out like 95% of what the sign out would be, and the human pathologist just needs to add some nuances. So that's really an infinite speed increase. But AI is not everything. There's always a human something else. The best analysis of inflammation of tubules, tubulitis, is a combination of handcrafted features, texture analysis from old-fashioned image analysis, and AI. And in many other instances, that is also true, that AI is not everything, and humans still have something to offer, and there is a benefit of handcrafted human-generated features. But what will this next 60 days of AI contain? It depends on who you talk to. So Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, predicted that this year, 2023, may see 500 years of progress in a single year. Massive increase in human creativity and specific progress, or maybe none at all. Yejin Choi has been looking at value pluralism, the idea that in the ethics that we're aiming for here, there's not just one goal. The goal depends upon what the situation is. And she feels that in many important instances, no one is working on that value pluralism, the idea of identifying what the different objectives should be given different situations. The third lesson, AI is not limited in impact. As some of you would have realized on Tuesday, I disagree with David Pierce about two things. I disagree that older people never change their minds, and I disagree that computers are micro-experiential zombies. I think there must be something more to computers than that, given what ChatGPT and DALL-E are able to do. And I think you probably feel that way too. They're not like us. They're not conscious. They're not, but they're not micro-experiential zombies who can't put things together. If they can't put things together, they wouldn't be able to create interesting ChatGPT output. And a lot of that output is better writing, better thinking, better drawing than what any of us on this call could ever do. And much more profound changes are coming with GPT-4. Yeah, so the fourth lesson, you're not limited by your own skill level. Up until now, that has been the case. If you're asked to create something, the quality of that is limited by your skill at creating it. But that is no longer true, because now AI can produce products for you that are way beyond your skill level. But your prompt craft is also important. As Jason Silva says, now we are limited only by our dreams. And so we can put our names on things that are better writing, better thinking, better drawing than the biological you could ever create. And that's a bit troubling, but exciting at the same time. It's hard to know what to make of it, except that this seems, as unlikely as it seems to be true. So one good thing happened on January the 3rd in terms of the success of my presentations. This slide used to say that I have been looking for a trainee, a physician trainee in pathology to join this effort of creating the standards for telling whether you're dealing with a human, with an AI, an AI assisted by a human or a human assisted by an AI. It's not only a visual standard, but also an auditory standard. When you begin to interact, you would receive a tone, and that would immediately inform you which of the four situations you're in. And as I spoke on January the 3rd, one of our pathology trainees signed on and is a person with previous before medical school experience in this area, and he is now working as a part of this project. I'm very happy to say. So there have been some successes. Yeah. And what about giving up control to AI? Is that an extremely dangerous thing? I don't think so. I mean, I gave up control to DALL-E quite a while ago when I started using it toward the end of July. There are certain things that it wouldn't do, and I changed the words I was using. And yeah, I was deferring to what DALL-E wanted, and it worked pretty well. And did DALL-E reward me in the end? Yeah. Anybody will tell you that DALL-E can't spell, but DALL-E can spell for me when I'm doing certain kinds of searches. If I'm searching for world peace or human cooperation, DALL-E really likes that. Then it can spell happy phrases like happy place, happy love. Yeah. That otherwise it cannot put letters together to spell properly. The sixth lesson, the possibility of positive outcome with artificial general intelligence, went way up with Stuart Russell's presentation, the Nobel Prize Dialogue, December 9th, 2022. Remarkable turnaround when you go back and listen to his December 2021 lectures. And it may be in response to our critique. There's no proof of that, but he gave those lectures, we critiqued them, and then he came back with such a positive view of how good a world could be with computers in charge, which is exactly what Rich Sutton and I have been talking about. So this is a picture of that presentation. I also gave you the full length, so you can watch the whole thing if you want. Stuart Russell predicts that AGI with this positive influence could increase worldwide GDP by tenfold in every country with machines in charge. And so this would increase scientific progress and creativity and do more to allow successful pig-to-human transplants. Be a lot of barriers that we could overcome if we had AI helping us. So, yeah, in our original location in Banff, this is the small building where we had the first Banff classification meeting in 1991, 32 years ago. And we had mule deer, which looked like that, poking their heads in the doors. And we had children with us, too, which was kind of cool. Didn't have childcare organized, so there were kids in there. And they were really, really charmed by the mule deer poking their heads in. Mommy, Daddy, look. Yeah. So now we have different animals. We have pigs, pig organs in the operating room. So come a long way from mule deer in our meeting rooms to pig organs in the operating room. And finally, I want to leave you. You can read this on Twitter. This is Rich Sutton's statement about the case for ambition in artificial intelligence research. Within your lifetime, AI researchers will understand the principles of intelligence, what it is and how it works well enough to generate beings of far greater intelligence than current humans. This will change everything. The way we work and play, our senses of identity, the goals we set for ourselves and our societies. It will be the greatest intellectual achievement of all time, an achievement of science, of engineering, of the humanities, whose significance is beyond humanity, beyond life, beyond good and bad. I call it the prize. The prize is a great and glorious goal. Ambitious AI researchers should keep their eyes on the prize. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now and we can talk. Okay. So, any thoughts, comments, vigorous refutation? What do you think?
Hey, Dr. Solez.
Hello, Zayed. Yeah.
There was a point you made like a couple slides back where you mentioned how the tenfold increase in GDP essentially like confirms the statement about why the like this is why the future is porcine. Can you just like explain that a little bit?
Well, yeah, it's sort of it's true. All those things are on the same slide, but I think don't you feel that there's something sort of unseemly about mentioning dollar amounts of like trillions of dollars? That's sort of distracting. Most people never think of dollar amounts that big, right? And so I guess what it does is kind of normalizes this. When you listen to Rich Sutton or me talk about this positive future, we never talk about money. And talking about money maybe for many people makes it more real and tangible, and they can imagine liking that, right? So yeah, that's why I felt it made it more practical to think that we might be able to solve the remaining problems. It's not that those problems require the money, but that the human beings, some of them may require the lure of having increased tenfold increase in GDP in every country to kind of get them enthusiastic about this.
Mm-hmm. But I think the argument can still be made that the research can be developed at a faster rate with enough funding.
Yeah. Sure. Yes. No, that is absolutely true. And the further argument can be made. I know this may be maybe not a comfortable area for you, but that eventually we won't use money. We won't need it. Everything we want will be free, easily obtainable. And there are societies that work like that now. I visited one in India. And have sent you the link to that. And Star Trek. Funny thing happened with me and Star Trek and money in the last week. I was in another Zoom where we were talking about money and the future. And I said, well, in the future, we won't use money. Star Trek doesn't use money. And this person put a link in the chat about the economics of Star Trek. You go to the link and it says exactly that. Star Trek economics don't use money. But there's the Ferengi. You probably know the Ferengi very well. They're sort of more primitive race within the Star Trek world that do not evolve. As the other people evolved, the Ferengi didn't evolve, and they continue to use money. But the other people in Star Trek don't use money. So then he realized that the link argued the opposite of what he said, and he kept trying to send me links that proved that Star Trek used money. And gradually I learned that I was right. That doesn't happen very often. Star Trek basically didn't use money, most of the societies there. And that worked okay. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So, yeah, any other thoughts? So what I feel, kind of reflect on some long-term things. What about those of you who have listened to me and kind of silently shaking your heads and just can't figure out what the heck I'm talking about? Some of these ideas, it may come to you later in your life, how this all fits together. And that's happened with me with a lot of things. You can find videos about this. A lot of you may believe that the way your life is going to work is your life will peak at a certain age and it's all downhill from there, right? I have never experienced that. As a matter of fact, I sort of see it the other way. I started out with all these defects in my thinking, I mean, serious defects in my thinking. And gradually I've overcome them, but I've not overcome them all, probably. So as life keeps going, it keeps getting better. So I don't think that that's necessarily true, that your life is going to peak at a certain point and then it's all downhill, no matter how much you may believe that is the case. Yeah. So.
No, that's an interesting point. Like, I feel like with a lot of the concepts introduced in this course, it's first of all, it's like things I never would have thought of before or had like, yeah, just haven't been exposed to. But at the same time, because some of these ideas, they seem kind of distant and maybe sometimes a little hand wavy in that way.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes I'm like, oh, like okay, that's pretty cool, but like I don't even know what my own opinion on that even is, right? But it's pretty interesting that you talk about like how in your experience, like ideas in your past will eventually kind of creep up and you kind of think of it more later in your life. And I feel like recently, now that I actually lived alone for the first time this year, and like a lot of stuff like my parents told me before, like I'm like, oh, like I kind of understand now, and like
they were right.
and so
I always
on.
thought they were idiots before, but they could have been right. Yeah, yeah. No, well, let me just wax poetic for a bit about Richard Feynman. You probably know he's a Nobel Prize winner, and he was a musician. He was a really fun-loving and funny guy, and he's a really cool human beyond being a very bright physicist. When he died, he left the following on the blackboard: what I cannot create, I do not understand. And you can interpret that various ways. You can also look at other people who sort of have interpreted it various ways. And he wrote more than that kind of indicated probably which of those interpretations is right. But one thing he certainly cannot have known about, but seems to be talking about, is large language model reverse engineering things like x-rays and, kidney biopsy slides and things like that. He can't have possibly been thinking of that, but yet his words fit so well that idea. Because why is it that I keep coming back to this reverse engineering pathology? Why does that even interest me? What's the appeal? I think it is Feynman's idea that you don't understand what you're doing until you can reverse engineer it, right? When I am at a point where I can put in data into a computer and a pathologic picture comes out, right? I like describe a patient and what the disease process is, and the computer figures out what pathology picture that would look like. That's what the current deep fake x-rays are. So they can put in a sort of description of the x-rays that they're looking for, and this fake x-ray is just as good quality-wise as the regular ones from real patients. So that excites me. And you could say, well, the general construct is the same. Whatever Richard Feynman was talking about when he died, it's true he didn't know about large language models and deep fake x-rays and so on. But I still think that's why it's exciting to me, that you can say I'm limited as somebody who says his profession is I am a pathologist if I can't reverse engineer the process that I'm dealing with. If I can't say, well, this is the way in which those appearances come to be. And it's not just in 2 dimensions, also 3. So if you can create it in 3D, then you can actually make the organ. You can generate a stem cell generated organ by putting in data, getting this 3D picture and creating that, and then maybe the cells will go to the right places. So it's just a level of understanding beyond where we are now, and that's why it excites me. And it's true that I'm attaching to Richard Feynman an interpretation of his writing that he could not possibly have understood at the time. But I'm not the first person to do that with the writing of famous people, I'm sure.
Well, I think the exponential growth of AGI, AI in general, I feel like we're definitely gonna get to a point where, these models will just be so complex. Like even sitting in an AI class, professor will just be like, yeah, you write this neural network. These are the parameters. We don't know exactly why it works, but like it works, right? And so it's like, complexities of these models will just become so much more complex, and that we're just it seems like eventually we just won't be able to understand it completely,
Right, but
reverse
then
engineer it at all.
it begins another dialogue, because with a brain implant, you would be able to understand it. Would you be a better person that way? Would you be more fun to talk to, or would it wreck everything? Would you become the dullest person on earth if you had this brain implant that allowed you to understand it? Maybe your incentive to say interesting things to the people around you would greatly diminish. I don't know what might happen, but it's not necessarily true that the smarter you are, the more interesting you would be for other people in society, it could work the other way, that beyond a certain point, your own intellect is so fascinating to you that you don't need other people, right? Yeah, so.
Right.
Yeah, so should we get some more people here? Suki and Samir, do you guys want to say something? You don't have to, but it's possible that they've taken a break. You may think this is unusual, but in teaching the residents here, the people training, my interests are a lot broader than theirs. And I frequently situation where a lot of those black boxes on Zoom are not really actively there, So anyway, I've become quite familiar with that. Yeah. So, what are your thoughts about this as a part of the course? Did it seem to you like didn't really fit, like I'm cheating just because I have a strong interest in this, that I'm putting it in the course, but it may, does it expand your horizons, or does it just confuse you? Or both? I don't know. So,
I mean, I think like I kind of view this class as kind of like a goodie bag of just things that are loosely related to AI and medicine and things like that. But like yeah, no, I felt like it was definitely interesting, and especially with this course, like it's I think one of the strong points is it is that broadness, right? Even with our paper and presentation, just so much
right.
flexibility and freedom. So no, I thought it was awesome. Yeah.
Great. Okay, Suki and Samir, yeah, do you want to say something? A statement, anyway, or some utterance? Yeah,
Oh my God, she's
I don't think they're on the Zoom anymore.
I see. Okay, all right, okay, all right. But Sherahill, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, just one curiosity, I suppose, that I had. Why pigs and why are we limiting
Well, yeah, no,
our pigs?
I
Like, is
can answer that. Yeah. So it didn't begin with pigs, of course. It began with non-human primates. And there are a number of reasons why non-human primates are not practical here. You can't generate enough numbers. They reproduce too slowly. They're too close to humans. So a lot of non-human primate diseases would be easily passed to humans. There's less of that with pigs, but also just the human feelings that we have for non-human primates. The researchers who've studied primates in the wild and all that kind of thing. When researchers who study primates in the wild come to talk to xenotransplantation researchers, it's clear to everybody in the room that non-human primates are not going to be suitable, just can't be used. It's not only that the numbers won't work and so on, but the sort of way you feel doing this, with something so close to humans, just won't work. And that was, agreed upon maybe 15 years ago. It's not a recent discovery. So we can't use non-human primates, and pigs have been the other more actively studied animal. And they reproduce quite quickly. There are all sorts of specialized kinds of pigs. There's mini pigs and so on. You probably know all that. And yeah, so yeah.
I'm gonna just a little devil's advocate. So
Yeah.
do you think having those kind of feelings towards non-human primates and deciding not to use them is a limiting factor in the research, right? Like have we really explored all possibilities with that, right? Or we haven't, and we're just like, no, this is wrong, blah blah blah. So we're just not gonna do
No,
it.
I think, yeah, the reason we're not using non-human primates is multifold. So it's not just because of that. It's also because of the fact that it wouldn't be safe, and we can't scale it up. With pigs, we can scale it up. Pigs reproduce really well, and yeah. So we can definitely scale up a pig or oriented system to any number that we want, and that's not possible with non-human primates. So even feelings aside, you can imagine a society just doesn't care. They still wouldn't find it practical to use non-human primates, right? Yeah, Zayed, that's fine. Yep. So no, I'm happy with how this went, and happy with the questions. Yeah, and yeah, we'll see how. So this is the 23rd day of the 60-day period. Let's see what other exciting things happen in the remaining part. Yeah.
Do you think there'll
So
be
yeah.
do you think there'll be backlash for using pigs as essentially spare parts in the same way that there's backlash for us eating animals today?
Yes. Yes. Certainly. No, I
And so
think
how
the same organizations that are against killing animals for food are strongly opposed to this. Yeah.
and so do you
So
think the potential of saving lives would change their minds in a sense?
would
Or do
change
you
the
think this is going
mind
to be
of
a long
some
battle?
people, but probably not the leaders. I mean, PETA, isn't that what it's called?
Yeah,
Yeah. I
yeah.
think the people who are actually PETA members are unlikely to have their um, feelings changed by saving human lives.
So is that just like a constant struggle that's whether you're eating animals or using them for, organs or what have is, it's just going to be a
Well, what I argued, and I don't know how serious I really was about this, it has multiple components. I argued that our gratitude toward pigs and our kind of embarrassment of how well this has turned out, and that humanity benefited so much from pigs, will reduce the eating of pigs for food. I don't have any evidence for that. Zero, nada, none. But anyway, this is what I argued, and it went beyond that. I figure that why do you need to take two kidneys from a pig? You only need to take one, right? And you're so grateful to the pig, you can take one of its kidneys and then have it live out its life in some pleasant place, like a pig sanctuary on steroids where everything's maximized for the pig pleasure, whatever. Yeah. And where should that be? Well, it turns out we have a family cabin. I haven't been there since my honeymoon in 1968, but there are a lot of other family members who have been there, and it's been maintained pretty well. And there's a lot of land around it. Starting, but of course, this is just my idea as somebody who hasn't used the cabin since 1968 to have all that land there where we used to go on holiday be for all these pigs with one kidney that have donated kidney and living out their life. I think that may be the most unpopular idea I've ever had in my entire career. And even within the family, I don't know whether anybody has heard me talk about this, but the fact that I would consider using our family cabin for something like that. Yeah, but anyway, these are some of my thoughts about it.
I kind of wonder if, I guess historically, like the pig species has been, there are religions that think it is, a dirty animal. They don't eat pork, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, wow, they like, if you need to get a transplant and, you've grown up thinking that it's a filthy animal, like to have one of its parts in you, it's like, well, so yeah, I feel like there would probably be some
religious experts in those religions allow it though. So they say if it's life-saving, that's fine. You can still use it. So it has been accepted.
I disagree with that. It's just pardon the interruption. Yeah. Just speaking as somebody who adheres to one of those religions.
Sure. Yeah.
I think the majority of I think you'd find a lot of people who would rather die than get a transplant from a pig. Technically, I think I'd consider myself one of those people just based on how strong my beliefs are. But yeah, that was certainly an interesting topic that was crossing my mind all throughout and even before the presentation. Yeah. Because a lot of people, I think, not just for a religious reason, but just sort of a superiority complex will say, I don't want a pig's anything in me unless it's bacon. Yeah. Right? So just
no, I think that's right. So that nothing is simple here. So if it were, then what the religious experts and leaders say would carry the day, right? But it really doesn't. It's what the individual feels about it. Having been taught your whole life that pigs are bad, why would you want a piece of a pig inside you? Yeah. So
but that's where the sort of the other aspect of today's discussion with the AI generated aspect of transplantation, that's where it becomes quite interesting because that's possibly a solution. In fact, it would be a solution, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that even maybe you would find it acceptable to have a decellularized pig organ that's been recellularized with human cells and have those human cells be what is supporting you. I'm not saying that that's ideal, but it's probably better than a purely pig organ inside you.
Yeah, I just think the extent to which people go today where, even example, a wallet or a football that's made with pig leather, they won't touch it, right? So but yeah, it's I guess it comes with the time and it's a very individual thing. So what's acceptable for one person, I guess won't be for the other. So
Yeah. Well, I think, can't you imagine that controversies conferences can fail? They can be structured the wrong way, they can have the wrong topic and so on. I sort of feel if we do it right, this can be one of the best ones ever, because everybody's voice is worth hearing here, right? It isn't that you just want a few people to make the final decision. That isn't it. No, in order for this to be successful, there has to be something, and maybe our October Controversies Conference with those 30 people can be one of those things where you would say, well, every important point of view was actually considered. That would be wonderful, to have something like that. So that's what I'm looking for when I'm asking to help me with the 30 names, Maybe you would like to be there. Yeah. So
yeah, I mean, October is still a bit away, so we'll have to.
no big conflict
But yeah,
yet.
it certainly would be something that definitely something that's interesting for sure. So
Yeah. Okay, well, I thank you very much, and the time period is over. Now, coming up are a bunch of lectures about AI, and then quantum biology. So anyway, little change of pace. Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you
All
very
right.
much, and we'll see you next week.
All right.
thank
Okay.
you.
Take
All right,
care.
have a good one, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.